Assalamu alaikum. Before you begin this video, just quickly wanted to let you know that so much of the work on the Quran has been completed on Bayyinah TV. I want you to enjoy systematically studying the Quran from the beginning all the way to the end in brief and then in great detail. And to do that, I'd like for you to sign up on BayyinahTV.com. And once you appreciate what's going on in Bayyinah TV, I want you to become an ambassador for it and share that subscription with friends and family and give it as a gift also. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم مثل الذين كفروا بربهم أعمالهم كرماد اشتدت به الريح في يوم عاصف لا يقدرون مما كسبوا على شيء ذلك هو الضلال البعيد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي فالحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Today insha'Allah we've moved on to Surah Ibrahim, which has a number of very beautiful parables. And today's parable seems rather brief. It has some of the elements that we've touched on before, but some very new things that Allah is going to talk about. Let me start again, as usual, by translating the ayah briefly for you. مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ, the example of those who've disbelieved in their master. أَعْمَالُهُمْ, their deeds are كَرَمَادٍ اشْتَدَّتْ بِهِ الرِّيحِ, their deeds are like ash that strong wind attacks. في يوم عاصف, on a day that is full of relentless violent wind. لا يقدرون مما كسبوا على شيء, they are not in control over anything that they earned in the least bit. ذلك هو الضلال البعيد, that is the ultimate loss, or that's the most impossible loss to regain from. Sometimes they translate الضلال البعيد as a far off misguidance. We'll revisit that when we get to the end, inshallah. So, as you may have maybe surmised, this ayah is going to talk about a comparison of the deeds of disbelievers. And you can guess that later on in the same surah, we're going to see a comparison of the deeds of the believers. So it's the two worldviews of deeds that are being compared. The first question that I want to put before you, that Mufassirun also ask themselves is, which deeds is this referring to, right? And to understand the answer to that question, one way to think about that is that they are working hard to undo Islam. Islam is spreading, and the kuffar are getting worried about that. And I told you the Meccan Quran is particularly targeting the enemy forces, the elite of Quraysh, who saw Islam as a threat. So they are working really hard to undermine Islam any way that they can. And those are their deeds that is being talked about, their work, their project of destroying Islam. Another way to think about that is, we have in Islam a concept of good deeds. And generally when you see amal, then it's generally a reference to good things. Unless you qualify it, you can assume that amal is a reference, not just amal salih, but amal itself is a reference to good things. So we have a concept like charity, we have a concept like helping each other, we have a concept like honesty and truthfulness in dealings, or kindness. These are all good deeds that are Muslim, but also they're universal. And you might find that non-Muslims also do those things. The kuffar, Abu Jahl, might also be kind to a child sometimes. And the kuffar might also give an act of charity sometimes. And of course they took care of people that were coming for Hajj, and they were also taking care of the Kaaba and the cleaning up and the maintenance of the facility. They were also providing for the poor quite a bit, and they were sacrificing animals and giving away quite a bit. In fact, even when they gambled, which is the bad thing, but some of the winnings that they got from gambling, they would give away in charity. That was part of their thing. So it wasn't all bad. It actually reminds me of the one time, or a few years ago, when I used to frequent Las Vegas for Islamic reasons. They have a Muslim community, okay? I have to say that every time I bring up Vegas. But, in Las Vegas, unlike most of the United States, in Las Vegas, there's actually quite a bit of free healthcare. There's, relatively more free college education. There's all these other benefits, and all those benefits are coming from the casinos, right? So the casinos make so much money that they kind of pour some money over to the state and to colleges and universities, and, so good comes from it, in that sense. Also a fun place because it has the highest concentration of psychiatric specialists and heart specialists. It makes sense, lots of heart attacks, lots of, But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is even disbelievers, the worst of them, did some good things. Even good things that by our standard are good things. Helping the poor is a good thing even by a Muslim standard, right? But then I'll add a third dimension to this, and that is sometimes people who don't have the concept of Allah and they don't have a concept of meeting their Rabb and a concept of gratitude, then their entire worldview changes. Because then if you don't have a concept of God, then whatever you have is actually yours. It wasn't given to you, it's yours. You deserve it. And whatever you give to someone else is out of your grace and generosity. And if you're your own master, because you don't have a concept of a Rabb above you, you're your own master, then you decide what's right and wrong. Because there's no higher authority telling you what is right and what is wrong. And if you belong to the highest class of society, then in that sense, not only do you not have somebody else higher than you that you answer to, you decide and you set a standard for what is right and wrong for the rest of society. In a sense, you become a kind of a god for that society. So it only makes sense that Fir'aun used to call himself a god, right? And Nimrud used to say things like, Ana uhyi wa umit, because the higher up you go in a certain societal ladder, and you go up the pyramid quite literally, right? Then eventually you're going to be in a position where you're dictating morality, you're dictating, and you're the all entitled. So it's stemming, your worldview revolves around you. You become the God of your universe because you don't have a Rabb in place, right? So if you notice the beginning of this ayah, Allah says, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ, the example of those who've disbelieved in their Rabb. So there's a denial, not just they don't believe in Allah. Interestingly, they did have a concept of Allah, and in places like Surah Al-Ankabut, Allah even explicitly tells the Prophet ﷺ to ask the question, وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. If you were to ask them who created the skies and the earth, لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهِ. This is a late Meccan surah. These are the mushrikun. And you're asking them, who created the skies and the earth? And Allah says, I guarantee, I swear by it, they will absolutely say it is Allah. They will say Allah. So they don't have a problem with the concept of God. They have a problem of shirk, which can be could be an association of idols, but there's another dimension of that too, and that's actually encapsulated in the word Rabb. So it's not مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِاللَّهِ, it's مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ. There's a difference. Not those who disbelieve in Allah, but those who disbelieve in their master. Because when you say the word Rabb, and you acknowledge Allah as Rabb, you've accepted Him in the higher position of authority. He's not just someone who made you and then let you go. Like, the car manufacturer makes the car, but the manufacturer is not the one controlling or driving the car. The owner, there's a new owner, and they can do with the car whatever they want. The factory that made the pen is not the one writing with it. They just made it and they let it go. So God made the universe, fine. God made me, God made you, but then He's busy doing other things. Now we're free. He did His part, now we're doing our part. He has no control or authority over how we operate. So there's a concept of belief in Allah without Allah being a Rabb. So there's no rububiyyah of Allah. But Allah is saying that's actually one of the core problems of the Arabs that were rejecting Islam, is they were refusing to accept Allah's place as Rabb and therefore their place as Abd. Now the additional comment that I'm making to you in the most simple terms is if you don't accept Allah as Rabb, someone or something will take the place of Allah as Rabb in your life. Something will take its place. And if you find nothing else outside, it'll be yourself. you'll become the Rabb for yourself. أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you seen somebody who takes their own whims, own feelings, and turns them into their God? Right? That's the concept that Allah even describes in the Quran. So it's almost as if it's that kind of people that is being talked about in this ayah when Allah says, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ. Now, Allah is going to talk about their deeds. And like I said, there's three implications. There's either the deeds they're doing to destroy Islam, one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is the deeds they do that are good even by our standards. But then there's a third, the deeds they do that are good by their own created standard. Right? They come up with their own morality, so they have their own standard for what's good and what's bad. And that's where I'm going to start. The other two are easy for you to think about. But the third one is where I'm going to begin. They have in their culture, a disbelieving culture, they'll have things that they celebrate, right? Things that are considered good, like a beautiful wedding, or a grand sporting event, or an inauguration ceremony, or a very expensive gala event, and a catering of this or that or the other, or a celebration, a national holiday. These are events, deeds, right, that they look forward to. And just go back to ancient Arabia, the rich Arabs, one of the things that they were known for was throwing big parties. They would invite all bunch of people, everybody come, I'm slaughtering 10 camels and 18 goats and 20 cows. It's going to be, barbecue all night, and they'd set up a bunch of fires, and there's dancing going on, music going on, food going on, people just having fun, and the rich guy is throwing the party. Right? He's just throwing the party right at the foot of the mountain. Everybody's having a good old time. They're drinking alcohol, they're having all this food, and a big toast to our patron, who slaughtered the camels or did this, and everybody's like celebrating. It's like, I love you guys, it's okay, And this is their good deed. They did something good because people had a great time, and it was a great celebration. And and people like that in Arabic, you know what they call them? Kathirul Ramad. The rich people, they would say those people have a lot of ash. Literally, they said they have a lot of ash. You know why? Because the idea was, man, when that guy throws a party, there's a bunch of fires, there's a bunch of meat being cooked, there's a bunch of alcohol, and when it's all done, the entire valley looks like it's covered in what? It's ash from the fire from the night before. That's ash man right there. So that guy, man, he's got serious ash. And that means he throws some big parties. He's super generous. Everybody has a great time because he's in our town. And he supports these. Now, who are the Kathirul Ramad in our times? It could be some billionaire who comes into a small town and builds them a football stadium, right? And he's like, they're gonna bring jobs in that neighborhood because the stadium's being built. Construction came to the area. A new highway started getting built. A bunch of pubs saw an opportunity. Hey, where there's football, there's alcohol. So a bunch of pubs started opening up. A bunch of restaurants started opening up. Nightclubs started opening up. And we're all really grateful to this guy who helped build this stadium or get the deal here, or this football club that moved to our area or whatever. They're the Kathirul Ramad of our time. An example. Right? And everybody's really happy that they came. Everybody's really happy that they made that move, and everything else good started happening. This is good. And by the way, this is the same thing as the opening up of casinos in the United States, right? So in many states in the United States, because they're Christian background, right? Many of especially the Midwest of the country, is very Christian in its indoctrination. So they don't like gambling because the Bible's pretty strong against gambling. So like no casinos will exist on state land. So what they do is they get these giant cruise ship type vessels, and they park them right at the dock, and that's the casino. It's not on the land, right? And but then they'll give lots of state incentives, and they'll fund a local school, and they'll open up a clinic, and they'll open up like a drug rehabilitation center. Well, why did the drugs come to the neighborhood anyway? And they'll open up a facility to help battered women. Why were the women being battered? Because there's an excess of alcohol. Where did the excess of alcohol came from? The casino. Because the guy gambled, lost all his savings, now he's drinking himself to death. And then he's beating people around him, right? So these things, they feed each other, but then we're so proud and so happy about them. When I went to Ireland, it was interesting, and you get at the cab in Dublin, and the guy says, which pub you want to go to first? Like that's like like if you land in Jeddah, right? They're like, okay, so you want to go to the hotel first? You want to go to the haram first? Like, what's the haram? You got to go, right? That's their haram. Like, so which masjid do you want to do ziyarah of first, right? Which house built by shaitan you want to go first? You want to go to McGuinness? You want to go to this one? You want to make this and make that, right? And I'm like, no, just the hotel. He goes, really? What are you doing in Dublin? And I was like, right? But and the economy runs on it. The economy runs on that alcohol. And I asked the guy, we started talking, and he's like, yeah, I gave up alcohol 20 years ago. I was like, really? What are you doing in Dublin? He goes, I just woke up one night, and my fists were full of blood, and I didn't know whose blood it was. And I didn't know how it got there. And I know from then on, whenever I would walk down the street in the park, or I'd go take my kids to school or anything, I don't know who's going to shoot me because I don't know who I beat up. So I was living in fear for many years. And when I first saw the blood, I didn't know if it was my wife's blood or one of my kids' blood. I didn't know. And it terrified me, and so I stopped. Right? That's the story he told me. Now the thing is, what I'm trying to tell you is, in their mind, drinking is a good thing. And these pubs, they generate money. And they bring a nightlife to the neighborhood. And other businesses pop up. But the evil they create, you kind of sweep it under the rug, right? So you have societies that develop their own concept of what is good. Their own shiny, glittery concept of what is good. And that is the good that Allah is now going to comment on. And some of the good that they do as a result of that is actually, even by our definitions, good. So if the casino helped open up a hospital where cancer is being treated, well, cancer treatment is a good thing. And patient service is a good thing. Those are good services. But the root of it is something evil. Right? So then people look at that and say, well, okay, it's bad, but look at all the good that's coming from it too. Look at the good side of it too. Now Allah is going to talk about things that are twisted in their definition of good, and even the actual good that sometimes comes out of it, but the root of it is evil. The root of it is something bad, right? All of it's being talked about comprehensively in this ayah. And what does Allah compare it to? He said, أَعْمَالُهُمْ, their deeds, all of them, كَرَمَادٍ, they're like ash. And we have to take pause and understand something about ash. One hint towards ash I already gave you. Allah is taking a pretty good shot and a pretty good dig at the elite of Makkah, who the best of them used to be called people of what? People of ash. And Allah says their deeds are not, they're much like ash. Right? And so in the beginning, if they just heard their deeds are like ash, that doesn't sound that bad yet. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is good. Because ash was usually a compliment up until then. But now let's think a little bit about what ash is. Where does it come from? Ash is the result of something being burned. The wood that has been burned, or whatever substance has been burned, can no longer be recovered. It's completely destroyed, and what you have left is an utterly useless substance, ash. That's what you have left. When ash is burned, it's a temporary experience. It's not a permanent long-term thing. Whatever it was, it no longer exists. So if somebody started a fire to get heat, they got the heat temporarily and then it's gone. Now it's reduced to ash. If they wanted to cook something, whatever had to be cooked got cooked and then got eaten and it's gone. And now all you have left is ash. It's as if Allah is describing that these people's deeds are very glorious like a fire at first. And they're very tasty like the meal sitting in front of that fire. And they're very beautiful even as an experience as people gather around the fire and celebrate it, and there's the pyrotechnics of it all, right? And there's the glory and the glitz and glamour of it all, like a massive football game or like a huge election inauguration ceremony or something like that, right? These are massive events. They have a huge fire to them. But then these are temporary events. These are temporary deeds that look like they're amazing, but then all you have left at the end of them is ash. And Allah is comparing the memory or the long-term effects of those major events to ash. That's actually all that's left is just this memory. And all you want to talk about is, why did these billionaires throw these giant parties? Because they say, my grandfather threw the first, started the first bonfire and killed the first camel here. And then my father killed 2 camels, and today I'm killing 80 camels. And we're like, yeah, and he wants to remember the legacy of the ash and the parties and all of that, right? He wants to bring all of that up because that's their treasure, is the heirlooms of the previous generations and basically the ash that they've collected from all those fires of the past. But if you actually contemplate somebody who goes around collecting ash, what are they collecting? They're collecting something that's utterly useless. They're collecting something that's a memory of something that burnt out a long time ago, right? They're living in the past. They're glorifying something that happened, even though the reality now of it is worthless and it has no reality to it. So what happens with these people? They celebrate these moments and then they want to keep on reliving these moments. They'll put a poster of it and a framed picture of it, or, because keep the memory alive. And that's being compared to someone who gathers a pile of ash and just is holding on to it. SubhanAllah. أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَرَمَادٍ. Their deeds, they don't look at their deeds and say, this did something for me in the future. They look at their deeds and say, this was so amazing in the past. Because all they have left now is the ash from the fire that was once burning. You see? The believer, when they do a deed, a meaningful deed, they're not thinking about the past. They're thinking about the future. Ya Allah, accept this deed. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا. Our Rabb, accept it from us. Our concept of deeds is actually one that pushes us into the future, not the past. Another kind of side note on this, because I'm involved in the world of business to some extent, and there's some people I look at as mentors, seniors that have accomplished amazing things in business, and one of them was, mashallah, very, very successful, told me something about his hiring practices. His business is worth $700-800 million. He's doing okay, doing all right. So he says, how do I hire people? He says, when I hire somebody, and he has a tech firm, when he hires like somebody who graduated from some elite school, Harvard or MIT or somewhere, and they come and they start talking about, yeah, I graduated here, I got this degree, then I did this, then I did this, then I did this. I was like, the interview's over before it even started. Why? Because this person, all they want to talk about is what they did. They want to look back. And when I find someone who doesn't even have that much experience and says, this is what I want to be able to accomplish, this is what I know I can do, this is what I want to push myself to do, give me this opportunity so I can try this, and they're not looking back, they're looking where? They're looking ahead. And even when you ask them about their past, they say, I did that, and that was challenging, but I think I'm ready for much bigger challenges. They're not living in their past. They're not constantly reminding of their past. They're looking ahead. These are people that are not collecting ash. Right? الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَرَمَادٍ. Their deeds are like just piles of ash. Now, the thing with ash, not only is it a memory of the past, not only is it utterly useless now, it's also something very frail. It's something you'd have to put in a jar or some kind of urn or something to protect. You can't take ash that you want to preserve and pour it on top of your dining table or pour it on your coffee table and turn the fan on. You can't do that. You can't have it there and have the kids nearby, and a kid even comes near and goes, whew, or, and what's going to happen? It's going to start disappearing. It's going to start flying away. If this is your precious collection, then it's very, very delicate. First of all, it's not precious. It's worthless. And second of all, it's really hard to preserve. Now, what does Allah do with this collection of ash? He says, كَرَمَادٍ اشْتَدَّتْ بِهِ الرِّيحِ. Like ash that very strong wind attacked. The wind was very strong against it. Now, how much wind or how much air does it take to get rid of ash? A single breath. You could just take a piece of paper and just go like that. It's gone. But Allah says, no, that's not what I want. I want a wind to come. Now, if a strong wind comes and hits it, let's say it hit it for 1 second. Just 1 second. Is that person who was preserving this ash, this is my great legacy, and the legacy of my ancestors, this is our family legacy, and they're trying to hold on to it. After 1 second of the wind, are they able to restore what was taken away? No, but Allah adds, fi yawmin asif, on a day that is ruthless. In actually, asif we saw before as a description of wind. This is majaz aqli, as if the entire day, the 24-hour period, not a second of it went by without the wind attacking. The thing itself is so weak that you didn't need a strong wind and a storm and a constant, yawm asif, but Allah sent something, it sounds like overkill. It sounds like way too much response for something so weak to begin with. This kind of wind would be enough to take out entire trees. It would be enough to take out entire buildings. And here Allah is taking out just a pile of ash with it. And then on top of that, imagine the ancient Arab sitting in the desert with a pile of ash. And once it flies, it mixes in with the sand and goes into the rock. And if this wind came with such strength, the image that Allah is creating is so strange. He says, لا يقدرون مما كسبوا على شيء. مما كسبوا لكفى. مما كسبوا would have been enough. He says they have no control over everything that they had earned. All this past history that they collected. They have no control over it. It's all gone, not even in the least bit. It's not even some ash remains, some tips of it on their fingers. Nothing. The wind came and just took it far and wide. You know, one of the things that I was studying a while ago in the context of another surah was volcanic ash. And volcanic ash is interesting. Sometimes there's volcanic ash in places like Greenland, and parts of Europe. And the wind Allah has created in this world, sometimes that ash very regularly travels across the oceans and ends up in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's incredible that the way, because it's so light and it's so weightless, that it actually travels thousands and thousands of miles. Forget bringing all of it back. You won't even be able to bring one speck of that back. Not even one speck of it back. The mindset that Allah is creating about deeds, and the way He wants the believer to learn from this parable about deeds. One of them, I believe, it has to do with, in the business world, we talk about, perishable expenses and non-perishable expenses. One of the ways you can think about that. If you buy a candy bar, or you buy a pair of socks, or you buy a toothbrush or toothpaste or something, these are things you're going to use up. You use them up and you have to buy them again, use them up again, buy them and use them up again. But when you get something like a car, right? It's not just something you're using up, you're actually utilizing it and you're using it to maybe even generate income. You're doing something more with it. When you're buying real estate, you're doing something more with it. So the same money that you have, some of it is used on things that will not produce any future benefit. It's going to get consumed right away, the way that fire consumes right away and reduces something to ash. That money, and the same thing is true of time. You have, for example, I keep giving the example of young men that are preparing for a sports team or something. When they wake up in the morning and they're going to, between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m., they're going to go for a run or something. Or they could wake up at 5 a.m. and until 6 a.m. they can watch stupid videos on YouTube. They could do that. It's the same hour, it's the same 60 minutes, but the way you spent that time either invested something into the future or you burnt it and reduced that opportunity to ash. You understand what I'm saying? So our deeds, the believer starts thinking, what of my deeds, what of my time am I reducing to ash? And what of it am I planting for the future? Allah is saying the people of the false worldview, everything they do reduces to ash. Nothing actually goes into the future, even when they think it does. Even when they think it's long-term planning, it's ramad, ishtaddat bihi rih. I don't think it's too far-fetched. Yes, of course, this is also an imagery of Judgment Day. Because on Judgment Day, Allah says, وَقَدِمْنَا إِلَى مَا عَمِلُوا مِنْ عَمَلٍ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ هَبَاءً مَنْثُورًا. We will approach whatever deeds they had done and turn them into scattered dust, which is a similar image to ash being blown away. But there's another possible application of this ayah. And that is that when the Quraysh were hearing this, these people of all their deeds are going to get scattered away like ash, meaning their memory will be destroyed. The thing that they used to be proud of is now the thing that they're being humiliated with, right? It's being flipped on its head. It's interesting that they're going to show up with a lot of fire and flame on the Battle of Uhud. And many of them, when the battle is done, near 70 of the elites of Quraysh, they're going to be lying there dead on the battlefield. And all of their memory and all of that investment and all of that pride and all of that social status, everything that they represented, reduced to ash. Nothing left, you know? And that's going to be a day that's very tough against them. It's almost as if you can call it Yawmun Asif. And all the investments they did to destroy Islam up until then, which was culminating on the Battle of Badr, لا يقدرون على شيء على مما كسبوا على شيء. They have no control over anything that they earned, in the least bit. In the least bit. And then Allah, even the conclusion of this ayah, ذَلِكَ هُوَ الضَّلَالُ الْبَعِيدُ is so interesting. You know, the word dalal in Arabic means waste. The word dalal also means to be lost. I know commonly we translate it as misguidance, that's the spiritual meaning. But the literal meaning of dalla is actually someone lost. So someone lost in the desert is dal. That's actually what it means. The ash being flown away, scattered around the desert, what more powerful an image of something being forever lost? Dalal. That is the ultimate thing that gets lost. Like as if Allah is saying, if there's something that's lost so badly, it can never be brought back again, it would be the deeds of the disbeliever. And He adds the qualifier, the qaid, the sifa, which is al-ba'id. Now al-ba'id in Arabic means far. Some of you are familiar with the word ba'id. But ba'id in Arabic also means impossible. So the many figures of speech in Arabic that use the word ab'ad describe more, ab'adu min uqab al-jaw, for example. They'll say, it's more impossible than grabbing a falcon with your arm, just the falcon flying in the sky, you're going to grab it like that. Ab'ad, more impossible. The word ba'id actually gets used, for example, ذَلِكَ رَجْعٌ بَعِيدٌ in Surah Qaf, is that's a return that is not far, it's actually far-fetched, it's impossible. That's actually what it's saying. So now in this ayah, Allah says that is a kind of loss, and that's a kind of disappearance and gone to waste that is impossible to retrieve. It's impossible to come back from. ذَلِكَ هُوَ الضَّلَالُ الْبَعِيدُ. What an incredibly terrible loss. You know, this is again another, finally I'll say this is the reversal of another concept in a dominant society. In the dominant society, when Islam emerged and a young man became Muslim, his family told him, think about the future. You're ruining your future. Think about what your family is thinking. You know, we have a history. You're part of that history. We have lots of hopes for you in our future. Like they told a prophet of Allah, Kunta fina marjuan. We had lots of hopes in how you're going to be in the future. You're ruining our hopes. This Islam, you're not thinking straight. What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen 5 years from now? You know, your dad was going to hand you the entire inheritance. Now he can't do that because you've become Muslim. Think about that. And now Allah is saying the only people who aren't thinking about the future are the people who are on kufr. And the only one who's thinking about the future is the young man who accepted Islam. He's the only one. Everybody else is actually openly just falling into impossible loss to recover from. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us the clarity of, in terms of our actions, what of our actions are going to last forever and are going to continue to produce good. So after giving us this incredible parable, I'll give you one more thing about this ayah. Look at just even the next ayah. He says, أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ خَلَقَ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ إِنْ يَشَأْ يُذْهِبْكُمْ وَيَأْتِ بِخَلْقٍ جَدِيدٍ. He says, didn't you see that Allah created the skies and the earth purposefully? You know, ash lost its purpose, but Allah said Allah created everything with purpose, and if He wants, He could remove you. So in the previous ayah, He was removing the ash. And He says, if Allah wants, what's ash? I can also remove all of you. You can be, if you are nothing but useless deeds, then you are worthy of being removed yourself. And He says, وَيَأْتِ بِخَلْقٍ آخَرِينَ. And He can bring forward, or بِخَلْقٍ جَدِيد. He'll bring forward a new creation, meaning a creation that will fulfill its purpose. That won't be like ash that deserves to be just scattered away. SubhanAllah. You know? It's as if now Allah is telling us we cannot disassociate ourselves from our deeds. We cannot disassociate ourselves from our deeds. We are a collection of our deeds. May Allah Azza wa Jal make our deeds weighty before Him, and acceptable before Him. And may Allah Azza wa Jal not allow any of our deeds to be turned into scattered ash. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن الحكيم ونفعني وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
I've got a joke for you.
You've got a new
Assalamu alaikum everyone. There are almost 50,000 students around the world that are interested, on top of the students we have, in studying the Quran and its meanings and being able to learn that and share that with family and friends. And they need sponsorships, which is not very expensive. So if you can help sponsor students on Bayyinah TV, please do so and visit our sponsorship page. I appreciate it so much and pray that Allah gives our mission success and we're able to share the meanings of the Quran and the beauty of it the world over.